I'm Karen Etkin. I'm a gerontologist and I work in a field called AgeTech.
So, AgeTech and everybody I've talked to since we booked you on the show is like, AgeTech, what's that? I mean, it sounds familiar, but it's unfamiliar. Why don't you just take us through the very beginning of that?
Sure. So I like to define AgeTech as technology that is designed to tackle the challenges of aging while including older adults and other stakeholders in the design process of all these wonderful technological solutions.
So, there were three things I heard. One is having older people in the design process. So, I've been in software my whole career. So, do you have UX people who are older or UX people who test with older people? How does that work? Just stay with that
Well,
one.
Well, I think we have more UX people and product designers and researchers working with older adults from the very early stages in any startup's life to make sure that they are building the right product for them.
I did some work with Cal Lutheran on multi-generational acceptance of technology, how in the hospitality industry, for instance, you bring in iPads and you have lots of different ages and cultures and all those kinds of things. So getting people to accept. Give us an example of a consideration you would make for an older user base.
Well, first of all, we know that older adults are adopting technology in increasingly growing numbers over the
Mhm,
past few decades. The
mhm.
trend is very clear. However, and we also know, according to AARP's research, that most older adults would not identify as early adopters because they feel that the technology is not designed for them. So
Mhm.
I guess the first consideration I would make is how you make the technology intuitive for people to use so they don't have to work so hard at adopting it.
So I would think that that's a consideration for everybody except for Gen Z and the COVID kids. I mean, they were born, with screens very readily available to them. So let's discount them for a second. It seems like the let's call them the boomers and Gen X who didn't grow up with computers at home, right? They came in kind of after high school and in college. Um, they seem to have gotten phones, like I think the iPhone started all of this mostly, to keep in touch with family. So, so that's pretty easy. But as we have these other solutions that are specifically around aging, what are some other considerations that you have to take care of?
Well, first of all, you have to think of the value that the product brings into someone's lives.
Mm,
Because when you are on a fixed income, which is the case for most people who are retired, you're not necessarily going to buy gadgets just to try them out, just because they're new and you're excited. You have to really think about how you are adding value to someone's lives, how you are solving a problem that they might experience, and how you're marketing your product to them in a way that makes your value proposition obvious.
I'm thinking of helping my in-laws with technology. I'm like the designated tech support around here. And I look at some things and I was like, hold it. No one ever talked to someone who's older about how to deal with this. Like just things that I think are obvious to the rest of us are not obvious. So flip phones, probably 10 years ago, we got our elderly grandmother a flip phone that just had really big buttons and it was really obvious. There isn't that sense of having a UI on like Yahoo Mail, which my in-laws use, that is the equivalent of being that obvious. Is anybody doing something where there's I mean, I don't know how to say this, but be able to switch. So we have accessibility. Okay, so let's go there. So we know that we can have accessibility things. Are there similar settings that you might have that are related to elderly accessibility? I got to watch my language here, right?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, there are guidelines on how to make technology friendly to people who did not necessarily grow up using technology.
Okay.
And there are some of these guides are free online. If you look up
Okay.
how to make products, digital products, useful and friendly for older adults, you might find some of these guides free to use online. And you have like for Android phones, you have like big launchers, which again are a way to make your phone more age friendly. It's not just big buttons, it's also adding text to icons, because not
Mm.
everyone finds it intuitive that this cog icon takes you to settings. Sometimes you have to spell it out.
I'm thinking of just looking at an interface that's got, 15 different choices on it, and what's the next right one to do. So let's go past UX a little bit. And what are some advances that are coming around in technology that are specifically designed for an older audience? I'm thinking of things around fitness and monitoring your heart and some of those kinds of things. Can you give us some examples of those?
Absolutely. Well, we have lots of examples from the health and wellness space. Like you mentioned, we have online fitness programs designed for older adults to help
Mm.
people maintain or regain balance, strength, and mobility. We have lots of monitoring solutions. Even the Apple Watch, for example, can monitor your heart rhythm or detect a fall. It's not necessarily just for older people. Even if you're going hiking by yourself and you happen to take a fall, your Apple Watch might save your life. And when we look at other areas of life, like our financial longevity, we have startups today who help people figure out if and when they can retire and what actions they can take to make
Mm.
their retirement savings last longer.
Boy, I love that. As soon as you talk about financial, I start thinking of the various scams. And I remember my father calling, he was probably 90 at the time. And he said, "Do you know where your daughter is?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, she's in Toronto. She's in jail. She just called me to bail her out." And it's like, uh-oh, okay. So other than like, what is there a technological solution to that in addition to a common sense solution to that?
Well, common sense is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Digital literacy training, teaching people how to be
Ah,
safe online is also a big part of it. And we also have services today that help people screen calls from known scammers, for example, helping prevent some of that. But unfortunately, we still don't have the technology that will help you identify when someone who sounds like your granddaughter isn't who
oh,
they say they are. We're not there
wow.
yet.
You just opened up that whole area with generative AI and being able to have it sound. You're absolutely right. So I think the digital literacy is probably the way to go. So I'm thinking of AARP is one organization. This show is a global show. So are there I'm only familiar with that. Give us a couple of other examples, because I'm going to suggest to people to go find those places and get them to parents or elderly people in their lives.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, the AARP's digital literacy programs that are run by OATS, they're free. Some of them are online. So if you are English speaking, I believe you can go into that from anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
But almost everywhere in the world everyone that I talk to, you will find these local initiatives for digital literacy training for older adults. Usually they will be run by nonprofits. So they will either be
Oh,
free or at a low cost. And they're hyper-local initiatives. So I would encourage anyone watching to ask maybe your local municipality if they know what's going on in your area.
what got you interested in this field, Karen?
So it's a great question. I'm a gerontologist by training. I got into gerontology because I'm very close with my grandparents. And I used to work in the nonprofit sector. And during my time at several nonprofits, one of the challenges that we could not solve with traditional means was loneliness and social isolation. And so
Mhm.
when I got the opportunity, I got offered to join a startup building a social robot for older adults, not to replace human connection, but rather to augment it and enhance it and allow for more frequent social interactions, I realized that this was a scalable solution that we could use technology to tackle such a huge problem. And that was sort of how I got my start and how I was exposed to this ecosystem of startups. We now have hundreds, if not thousands, of startups around the world who are utilizing the most cutting edge technology to tackle some of the challenges of aging.
As soon as you said social robots, I thought of Japan and the work. I think they get more of the press for those things, but I'm reminded that Israel is extremely well known in the world I'm in technology in terms of software advances and technology and IP and those kinds of things. There, it's incredibly well regarded. So I hadn't thought of social robots. How is that going?
So it's going really, really well. I think Israel has one of the most interesting age tech ecosystems out there. And we are known as Startup Nation. And we do have, I think, a representative in any category in the age tech market.
So this is all so new age tech to me. And I like to think I'm paying attention to things, which is why we have you on the show. And just to let people know, on our site, we have lots of resources there where you can go and learn more about this. What are some of the biggest challenges that you find in addressing age tech?
Well, one of the biggest challenges startups face is funding, because this is still considered a niche market, although it's a huge market. Although we know that the longevity economy is huge, we know that older adults hold a significant portion of the world's wealth. Unfortunately, the age tech market is still considered niche. It is still more challenging for age tech startups to raise funding than, let's say, software enterprise startups or cybersecurity startups. So that is one hurdle any startup has to face to just get up off the ground, get up and running. And then, of course, you have the whole marketing and sales challenge, because in this ecosystem, you often have to sort of address the needs of more than one stakeholder. So you have the older adult as your user, but you might have the family caregiver as someone who makes the purchase or advises the older adult on how to purchase the product. And you might even have to develop a whole new user interface just for them, because they have their own needs that your product could address.
So that though, my product manager had just started to spin in terms of that. So I understand that's challenging. What's a big success story, do you think, that was something you thought was going to be really hard, and maybe it was hard, but as a result, it's a success that we may not know about?
Well, I want to assume that most people have heard of Great Call with their Jitterbug phone. That was a huge success. That was one of the first major acquisitions in the space. And you would imagine that it would be very difficult to market and to sell lots and lots of simple phones or simple smartphones to older adults. But a Great Call was really
It's
great at
called
doing it, and
Great Call.
great call. It was acquired by Best Buy a couple
Oh,
of years ago for
okay.
close to $1 billion. And so that was one of the first major success stories. And what they did really well, besides from creating great simple phones and simple smartphones for older adults, they were really great at knowing their customers, at knowing their users, and marketing to them and selling to them and providing great customer service to them. So they were able to build a huge business out of this. And that was, I think, surprising, because hardware is hard and selling direct to consumer is hard, but they made it.
You got me thinking about customer support, and I know in being the one person call center for my in-laws, because they'll call and say, should I press the OK button? And I don't know what the context is. I don't know what anything is on that. And a lot of times I'll just say, read to me what it says on the phone. I'm curious, are there special call center guidelines where we it's already a challenge at a call center because someone's in an agitated state because something's not working. But now it's not working, and I don't understand the obvious solution. So as the population ages, is that becoming a bigger concern, and how are they addressing?
Well, I really wish there was special training for anyone who works at any call center on how to be patient with people, any user who
Well,
might
yeah,
not be as digitally savvy
right.
as the person picking up the phone. I think it's an art, and you have to be trained to do it. And I don't know of many call centers that actually provide this training.
Yeah, it's we had to do that with computer animation because it's very, very complex, and just to teach people that they're agitated, the person who's calling you. So you have to get and let them know you understand them, you've got them, and it feels like it's the rare individual, and someone who has that much empathy and compassion tends to move on to another job. Why don't we kind of finish here with what what do you see like on the near 3 to 5 year horizon? What are some of the big problems age tech is looking to solve?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems, as you've mentioned, is the new way for scammers to scam older adults with generative
Yeah,
AI.
yeah.
They call it the grandparent scam. So that is one huge challenge. I think there are still many more challenges to solve around financial longevity and also around leisure. So lifelong learning, um, having fun in the third or fourth act of your life, and also on retirement or continuing to work, because we know that there are more people who wish to continue working past retirement age than there are jobs out there who are able and willing to hire these people. So these are the few challenges that I think are still sort of untapped. They're very much blue oceans, and I'm super excited. I can't wait to see what startups do in those areas.
Karen, thank you so much for helping us understand this big, brave new world.
Thank you.